20 black actors who suddenly disappeared for good. They were everywhere, box office hits, primetime television cultural icons. Then, almost overnight, they were gone. No farewell tours, no headlines, just silence. Hollywood wants you to believe these careers ended naturally, but what if they didn't? What if some of the most talented black actors were pushed out, boxed in, or quietly erased the moment they stopped being convenient? Today, we're breaking down the stories they never wanted you to question. Watch closely, because this pattern is bigger than any one name. Comment below who shocked you the most, and subscribe to Legends of Black Fame for stories Hollywood won't explain. Larenz Tate. Larenz Tate's career is not a story of disappearance. It is a case study in quiet defiance. When Tate exploded onto the screen as O-Dog in Menace to Society 1993, Hollywood immediately labeled him as the next dangerous young black male archetype. The performance was raw, terrifying, and unforgettable. Studio executives saw profit in repetition, and scripts flooded in each one, darker, angrier, more violent than the last. For many actors, that momentum would have been impossible to resist. Tate chose another path. Instead of cementing himself as a one-note figure, he made a decision that stunned casting rooms. He pivoted. In Love Jones, 1997, Tate reintroduced himself as Darius Love Hall, a soft-spoken poet navigating romance vulnerability and emotional maturity. The film became a cultural landmark, particularly within black cinema, grossing over $12 million on a modest budget and achieving cult classic status. More importantly, it shattered the idea that black male leads could not carry romance without aggression. That choice came at a cost. Hollywood's infrastructure is built on predictability, and Tate's refusal to conform slowed his ascent. For years, he worked steadily but selectively, choosing character-driven roles in films like Ray Crash and Why Did I Get Married, prioritizing substance over visibility. While peers chased blockbuster exposure, Tate built credibility. His resurgence in television, particularly as Councilman Rashad Tate in Power and Power Book 2, Ghost, proved what many had long known: his absence from the spotlight was never about relevance. It was about restraint. His portrayal of a morally complex politician added layers of nuance rarely afforded to black male characters in crime dramas, earning praise for its realism and intelligence. Beyond acting, Tate expanded his influence. As a producer, co-creating Bronzeville, a historical drama centered on black entrepreneurship in 1940s Chicago, this move signaled a deeper shift from participant to architect. Larenz Tate didn't vanish, he recalibrated. In an industry that rewards loud compliance, he chose longevity through intention. And in doing so, he built a career that bends to no stereotype and answers to no timeline but his own. Tichina Arnold. Tichina Arnold's career challenges one of Hollywood's most persistent myths, that longevity guarantees security. From the moment she stepped into the role of Pam James on Martin Arnold, proved she possessed something rare, commanding comedic presence without overpowering the ensemble. Holding her own opposite Martin Lawrence's high-energy performance was no small feat, yet Arnold did it effortlessly, becoming one of the show's most beloved characters. Her success continued well beyond the 1990s. As Rochelle on Everybody Hates Chris, Arnold transitioned from scene stealer to emotional anchor. The series ran for 4 seasons, earned critical praise, and resonated across generations. Rochelle was not a caricature. She was layered, sharp, disciplined, and deeply human. By every measurable industry standard, ratings, audience loyalty, cultural impact, Arnold had proven her value. Yet as she moved into her 40s, the momentum slowed. Offers became smaller roles, narrower. The industry that once relied on her comedic precision seemed unsure where to place her next. This wasn't about decline in skill or audience interest. It was about a system that struggles to imagine Black women beyond specific, age-defined archetypes. Mothers, grandmothers, punchlines, those were the lanes available. Rather than disappear, Arnold adapted. She continued working steadily in television, film, and voice acting, maintaining relevance without the fanfare typically afforded to peers with similar resumes. She also became more vocal about the structural barriers facing actresses who don't fit Hollywood's narrow definition of marketability. Tichina Arnold's story isn't tragic, it's revealing. It exposes how an industry can depend on talent for decades and still fail to invest in its future. She didn't fall off. The spotlight simply moved on, leaving behind someone who never stopped delivering excellence. Tatiana Ali grew up in front of millions. As Ashley Banks on The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, she evolved from precocious child to thoughtful young woman, becoming the emotional conscience of the Banks family. The role brought fame, visibility, and a clear path forward, one most actors would never question. Ali did. At the height of her popularity, she made a decision that baffled executives and defied expectations. She went to Harvard University. At a time when Hollywood expected her to transition seamlessly into adult stardom, Ali stepped away to study African American studies, choosing education over immediacy. It wasn't a pause, it was a redirection. When she returned, the industry had changed its tone. The expansive opportunities once promised had narrowed into familiar boxes, supporting girlfriend, background, sister, nostalgia casting. Ali declined to chase quantity. Instead, she focused on projects aligned with her values, appearing selectively in television and independent film, while building a life beyond the screen. Her evolution extended outside entertainment. Ali co-founded a production company with her sister and later launched Baby Yams, an organization supporting Black and Indigenous midwives' work rooted in community impact rather than visibility metrics. Marriage and motherhood further reshaped her priorities, reinforcing her decision to define success on her own terms. Tatiana Ali didn't vanish because Hollywood rejected her. She stepped back because Hollywood offered too little. In an industry that often equates relevance with constant exposure, Ali chose intention over inertia. Her story reframes the idea of disappearance. Sometimes the most powerful move isn't staying in the frame, it's deciding when to walk out of it, fully aware of your worth. Flex Alexander, for a brief moment in the early 2000s, Flex Alexander appeared to have cracked a code few actors ever solve. As the lead of UPN's One-on-One, he portrayed Flex Washington, a former professional athlete navigating single fatherhood with humor, discipline, and emotional depth. The show ran for 5 seasons, consistently delivering strong ratings and offering a rare depiction of positive Black masculinity on network television. Alexander's path to that success was unconventional. Before acting, he made his name as a dancer and choreographer, earning the nickname Flex for his physical precision and stage presence. That background shaped his approach to acting. He treated performance as craft, not convenience. Behind the scenes, he challenged scripts, questioned character motivation, and pushed for storylines that reflected lived realities rather than stereotypes. That insistence, however, came with consequences. As One-on-One ended, momentum should have followed. Instead, development deals dissolved and phone calls slowed. Alexander later described encountering vague feedback projects were labeled too urban, then not urban enough. The contradictions revealed an industry uncomfortable with creators who don't fit pre-approved lanes. Rather than chase approval, Alexander pivoted. He focused on theater faith-based work, motivational speaking, and community engagement. While his mainstream visibility diminished, his commitment to authenticity did not. Unlike cautionary tales marked by scandal or collapse, Alexander's career shift stemmed from resistance, not failure. Flex. Alexander didn't lose Hollywood's attention because audiences rejected him. He lost it because he refused to compromise control. His story illustrates a quieter truth. In an industry built on compliance, creative independence can be treated as disobedience. And sometimes success doesn't end. It simply exits the spotlight. Columbus Short. Columbus Short's rise was swift and undeniable. With Stomp the Yard, 2007, he became a leading man, almost overnight, anchoring a film that grossed over $75 million worldwide. Charismatic, athletic, and emotionally expressive, Short represented a new kind of star, one capable of blending performance with physical storytelling. That momentum continued with films like This Christmas and reached its peak on television as Harrison Wright in ABC's Scandal. As part of Shonda Rhimes' powerhouse ensemble, Short gained global recognition. The show averaged millions of weekly viewers, and his character became integral to its early success. Behind the scenes, however, instability was growing. By 2014, Short's personal struggles erupted into public view. Allegations of domestic violence, substance abuse admissions, and erratic behavior collided with an industry that demands reliability above all else. He was written out of Scandal, and the consequences were immediate. Hollywood is unforgiving to actors perceived as high risk. Projects vanished. Casting doors closed. Each subsequent legal issue reinforced a narrative that overshadowed his work. Short later acknowledged addiction and the pressures of balancing long production schedules without adequate support. In recent years, he has spoken openly about recovery, accountability, and rebuilding his life. While his mainstream career never fully recovered, his story is not one of mystery. It is one of collapse under unaddressed pressure. Columbus Short didn't disappear without explanation. His trajectory reflects how quickly Hollywood elevates talent and how ruthlessly it withdraws protection once stability cracks. It's a reminder that success without support can be as dangerous as failure, especially in an industry that moves on without looking back. Jaleel White. Few actors in television history became as instantly recognizable as Jaleel White. When he debuted as Steve Urkel on Family Matters in 1989, the character was meant to appear once. Instead, Urkel detonated into a cultural phenomenon that reshaped the series and ultimately White's career. High-pitched voice suspenders, oversized glasses, the image became unavoidable, syndicated endlessly across generations. The success came at a price. White was still a teenager when the character overtook the show, forcing him to maintain a physically demanding voice and posture through puberty. Years later, he confirmed that the strain permanently affected his vocal cords, requiring extensive therapy. While audiences laughed, the work behind the laughter was relentless. When Family Matters ended in 1998, White faced a paradox few actors escape. He was famous, but inseparable from the role that made him famous. Casting directors struggled to see beyond Urkel's silhouette. Dramatic roles were scarce. Adult leads were non-existent. Even White's own frustration became headline material after he famously joked that he would rather harm himself than play Urkel again, a hyperbolic remark that reflected creative exhaustion, not instability. Attempts to rebrand met resistance. His post-sitcom series Grown Ups was cancelled quickly, reinforcing the perception that audiences only wanted one version of him. Unlike peers who successfully transitioned into mature roles, White found himself frozen in time by a character that refused to age. Instead of fighting a losing battle for reinvention, White diversified. He moved into voice acting, lending his talents to animation and video games, where physical association no longer dictated opportunity. He also appeared sporadically in television and film, often leaning into self-awareness rather than denial of his past. Jaleel White didn't disappear because he failed. He became too successful at something he no longer controlled. His story exposes a harsh entertainment truth. Iconic characters can be prisons, especially for child actors whose identities form under public ownership. White remains active, articulate, and reflective proof that while a role may dominate a career's narrative, it doesn't erase the person behind it. The challenge was never talent, it was escape. Orlando Brown. Orlando Brown entered Hollywood long before fame ever found him. By the time audiences met him as Eddie Thomas on That's So Raven, Brown was already a seasoned child actor with credits in Major Payne and Family Matters. His chemistry with Raven Simonet was effortless, turning Eddie into one of Disney Channel's most recognizable sidekicks during the network's peak years. The show's success created instant visibility, but little preparation for what came next. When That's So Raven ended in 2007, Brown faced the difficult transition that derails many child performers, aging out of a carefully controlled brand without a clear adult pathway. Opportunities slowed, and the support systems that once surrounded him vanished just as quickly. Soon after, Brown's personal struggles became public. Arrests related to substance possession, domestic disputes, and erratic behavior dominated headlines throughout the 2000s and 10s. Rather than responding with intervention or long-term guidance, the entertainment industry distanced itself entirely. Studios moved on. Casting calls stopped. His decline became spectacle rather than concern. Media coverage often framed Brown as a punchline, ignoring the broader pattern of how child actors, especially black child actors, are discarded once they no longer fit marketable images. Each mugshot and viral clip further reduced his chances of recovery within mainstream entertainment. Brown has since spoken about faith rehabilitation efforts and attempts to stabilize his life. While a full professional comeback never materialized, his story isn't one of mystery. It's a warning. Talent alone cannot survive without protection, mentorship, and accountability structures. Orlando Brown didn't vanish overnight. He unraveled slowly in public, while the industry that profited from his youth watched from a distance. His trajectory reveals not just personal responsibility, but systemic neglect, an uncomfortable reality Hollywood rarely acknowledges. Kadeem Hardison. Kadeem Hardison became a symbol of a generation through his role as Dwayne Wayne on A Different World. With his flip-up glasses and evolving confidence, Dwayne represented an image rarely seen on television at the time, a young black man defined by intellect, awkward charm, and emotional growth. Over 6 seasons, Hardison helped anchor one of the most culturally influential sitcoms of the 1990s. The show's success should have opened doors. Instead, it narrowed perception. When A Different World ended in 1993, Hollywood struggled to imagine Hardison beyond the collegiate environment that made him famous. Despite proven range offers, skewed towards supporting parts and short-lived projects that failed to leverage his depth. This wasn't a lack of ability, it was a lack of imagination. The industry categorized Hardison as a TV guy, a label that often stalls momentum regardless of performance history. While contemporaries transitioned into film leads or prestige television, Hardison was rarely considered for roles that challenged audience expectations. Rather than chase relevance through repetition, he built a quieter career. Hardison continued working steadily, appearing in films like White Men Can't Jump, and later taking on guest roles across television. In recent years, his return to A Different World's universe-adjacent storytelling through projects like Black Monday reminded audiences of his understated precision. Kadeem Hardison didn't fade away. He was sidelined by an industry unwilling to let him grow beyond a beloved image. His career stands as proof that success doesn't always fail. It sometimes gets parked, waiting for someone willing to look again. His legacy remains intact, not because of nostalgia, but because his work never relied on gimmicks, only timing, intelligence, and truth. Gary Dourdan. Gary Dourdan's rise placed him at the center of one of television's most dominant franchises. As Warwick Brown on CSI Crime Scene, Investigation Dourdan became a familiar face in millions of households worldwide. At its peak, CSI averaged over 20 million viewers per episode, turning its cast into global figures and redefining procedural television. Dourdan's portrayal brought quiet intelligence and emotional restraint, helping ground a show driven by science and spectacle. Yet behind the scenes, stability was fragile. Years of long production schedules and personal struggles collided with substance abuse, a battle Dourdan later acknowledged publicly. In 2008, his arrest for possession of narcotics marked the beginning of a highly visible unraveling. Not long after Warwick Brown was written out of CSI in a dramatic storyline that ended the character's arc permanently. Once the show ended, so did the industry's patience. Casting opportunities evaporated, legal issues multiplied. Rather than separating performance from personal crisis, Hollywood treated Dourdan as a liability. Projects moved on without him, and his reputation became defined less by a decade of successful work and more by tabloid narratives. Unlike many cautionary tales, Dourdan never vanished by choice. He attempted returns through independent films, theater, and music, but mainstream acceptance proved elusive. The system that once rewarded his reliability offered little room for recovery. Gary Dourdan's story exposes a hard truth: success does not guarantee protection. In an industry built on momentum, losing structure can be devastating, especially when addiction enters the picture. His career didn't collapse from lack of talent, but from a lack of support once the spotlight shifted elsewhere. Jurnee Smollett. Jurnee Smollett's early career suggested inevitability. By age 10, her performance in Eve's Bayou earned widespread acclaim, with critics praising her emotional precision far beyond her years. Roles in The Cosby Show and The Great Debaters followed, marking her as one of the most promising young actresses of her generation. Then, almost unexpectedly, she stepped back. As Smollett entered her teenage years, roles grew narrower and increasingly formulaic. Rather than force a transition that didn't align with her growth, she chose distance. Education, personal development, and selective projects replaced constant visibility. During this period, Hollywood moved on new faces, filled the spaces she once occupied. Her absence, however, was strategic rather than accidental. When Smollett returned to prominence with HBO's Lovecraft Country, the impact was immediate. Her portrayal of Letitia Lewis combined vulnerability, rage, courage, and intelligence, earning her a Primetime Emmy nomination and redefining her public image overnight. The comeback worked because she returned with clarity. Smollett no longer chased roles, she curated them. Projects like Underground and Birds of Prey further demonstrated her commitment to layered storytelling rather than surface-level exposure. Journey Smollett's career arc challenges the idea that stepping away equals failure. Sometimes distance is preparation. Her story isn't about disappearance, it's about timing discipline and refusing to let an industry dictate growth before readiness. She didn't lose momentum. She recalibrated it and returned on her own terms. Kimberly Elise. Kimberly Elise entered Hollywood with the kind of debut most actors spend a lifetime chasing. Her performance in Set It Off, 1996, placed her alongside Jada Pinkett Smith, Queen Latifah, and Vivica A. Fox in a film that became both a box office success and a cultural milestone. Elise's portrayal carried emotional weight, restraint, and complexity qualities that critics immediately recognized as leading lady material. That promise deepened with Beloved, 1998. Acting opposite Oprah Winfrey and Danny Glover, Elise delivered a haunting performance that required psychological depth and historical sensitivity. Reviews praised her ability to convey trauma without spectacle, positioning her as one of the most serious dramatic actresses of her generation. Yet Hollywood responded cautiously. Instead of building vehicles around her, the industry filtered Elise into supporting roles and smaller independent projects. She became associated with important films rather than star-driven franchises, a distinction that often limits long-term visibility. While peers with less range secured repeated studio backing, Elise was treated as prestige talent rather than commercial priority. This wasn't due to audience rejection. Her work in The Manchurian Candidate, John Q, and Diary of a Mad Black Woman demonstrated consistent draw across genres. Instead, the pattern reflected an industry uncertainty about how to market Black actresses whose strength lies in emotional realism rather than glamour or stereotype. Elise continued working steadily, choosing projects aligned with substance over scale. Her performances remained disciplined, deliberate, and grounded even as mainstream attention shifted elsewhere. She never vanished. She was repositioned quietly and persistently. Kimberly Elise's career reveals a subtle but damaging industry habit, praising excellence without investing in it. Her legacy is not defined by absence, but by integrity. In a system that often confuses visibility with value, Elise built a body of work that prioritizes truth and endures without apology. Karen Parsons. Karen Parsons became instantly recognizable as Hilary Banks on The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. What could have been a shallow role was elevated by Parsons' timing intelligence and subtle emotional grounding. Over 6 seasons, she transformed Hilary into more than a fashion-obsessed stereotype, giving depth to a character audiences initially underestimated. When the show ended in 1996, Parsons stood at a crossroads. Offers came, but they were familiar, narrow, and repetitive. Hollywood seemed eager to repackage her image without expanding it. Rather than accept that path, Parsons made a rare and decisive choice. She stepped away. Her departure wasn't driven by burnout or rejection, but by conviction. Concerned about the lack of meaningful representation for Black children, Parsons founded Sweet Blackberry, an educational initiative producing animated films centered on African American historical figures. These projects, featuring stories like Henry Box Brown and Ona Judge, prioritized impact over income, reaching classrooms and families rather than box offices. Parsons' work earned accolades from educators and cultural institutions, quietly reshaping how young audiences engage with history. While her on-screen presence diminished, her influence expanded in a different direction, one rooted in authorship and purpose. Occasional acting appearances followed, but Hollywood was no longer the center of her creative life. She had redefined success entirely. Karen Parsons didn't fade out. She opted out. In an industry that equates relevance with exposure, her story challenges the assumption that staying visible is the ultimate goal. Sometimes the most powerful exit isn't forced, it's chosen. So the real question isn't why these actors disappeared, it's why Hollywood keeps repeating the same pattern. Were these careers lost to bad decisions, or were the rules never fair to begin with? When talent, discipline, and audience support still aren't enough, something deeper is at play. Maybe disappearing is just what happens when you refuse to fit into a system that profits from limits. Now it's your turn. Who do you think Hollywood failed the most? And who deserves a real second chapter? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and if you value stories that go deeper than headlines, subscribe to Legends of Black Fame.